Hi there, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. My name is Melanie and today is the end of the first week of Finish It February, where I basically take the month of February and focus on projects that I would like to finish, or at the very least make some headway into finishing them. The first project that I worked on for this week is the month in review album that I've been doing the last couple years. This is where I actually create an album using a single sketch, and I pre-do all the layouts for the entire year. Sorry for the glare. I'm going to take these out as I'm working on it, and I will show you the finished without the page protectors on them. But the point is, basically I have these all pre-made, and all I need to do now is go and add photos and journaling. Ideally I would do this throughout the year, but realistically it never happens that way. I use these to document those photos that I don't necessarily want to do a full layout dedicated to that photo. So they're little notes, if you will, about what happened in the month. And I have to admit, this year was a bit of a struggle. I had a couple of months where I didn't have a ton of photos. Again, with us, you know, staying at home, being restricted, etc., it just didn't lend itself to a lot of photo taking. And then when I did have something, obviously I took some photos when I did do that, but I would like to actually scrapbook them. So it was interesting. So what I'm going to do is, I've already got my photos printed. So I took a couple evenings to go through all my photos from last year, print them out. I took another evening to do up my journaling. I have printed these on cardstock. I will trim them out, and I will probably trim them into strips and add those to the pages. So let me get going, and I'll come back and show you the completed layouts. So I'm all finished adding the photos and my journaling. I did cut my journaling into strips, and I have placed it in this side of the layout. On almost all of the months, the journaling is actually on the lower half. I think this is the only one that I did on the upper, and that's just because I modified the design slightly on this one because of the way the paper was. And this went super quick. I think maybe less than 2 hours, and I had the entire album done. So that is January. This is what February looks like. What I really appreciate, or what I really like about this project, is that even though I have no intentions when I go into it as far as colors of photos, I have no idea, right? I pre-make these like a year in advance. And it always amazes me how the photos all seem to manage to work. So for instance, here I had quite a bit of green. I had green elements on here. This purpley pink is throughout. It just makes me happy. So as you can see, the layouts are pretty much exactly the same. We do switch up the elements a little bit and the pattern papers. So while it's the same design, they still look very different. This is for the month of April. As I mentioned before, I do like this kind of cut apart journaling. I think it just makes it look a little bit less stuffy, I guess, for lack of a better word. And although it does take a little bit extra to do this versus just having a journal block. So what will happen after this is these will go back in that album, and then any layouts that I do to cover other stories that I want to tell will go in between the months. So if something happened in May, like for instance, I went to the zoo, so I have more photos of that I want to document, that will then become like the next layout here, and then it will continue to build until we hit June and then go on from there. So that's another reason why I don't worry about having the same design. It is going to be spread out throughout the album. Now I did notice that some of my layers are a little bit loose, so I will go back with some glue and tack them down a little bit better. I don't normally do that, but when I do the month in review layouts, I don't put a ton of adhesive down, just in case I change my mind about something and want to tuck some additional layers in. Do you remember this groovy guava? I don't know if you remember, or if you saw my original post where I showed you or walked you through how I did the bases for these, but this groovy guava is kind of a well, I mean, you can see what color it is. And when I just had the mattes down, it overwhelmed the entire page. But now that I've added photos, it's toned it down significantly, and I really like how that's turned out. So just for a refresher, the collection that I was using was from Pink Fresh. It's their Indigo Hills 2 collection, and it has a lot of purples and blues, and I think that's probably why it does go so well with my photos, is because those are my favorite colors. I mean, seriously guys, this one couldn't have turned out any better than if I had planned it. I'm wearing a purple shirt with the purple mats, this pink flower tree, I think it's a tulip tree, I think that's what they call it, looks really great with the purple matting. This windmill that we saw when we were in the town of Solvang has kind of this purpley metal on the fans from the mill. I mean, it just looks really great, in my opinion. This was one of those months though where I didn't have a ton of photos, and what I did have were some screenshots, and we had an earthquake in September. Not a significantly big one, it was 4.6, but it was right in the Los Angeles area, so I did definitely feel this one. I also had a note from an article about the COVID situation where we had hit another threshold, and then I had made some reservations for a trip in March, and so it was just kind of interesting that while we had hit certain thresholds for COVID, things were starting to look up, and that possibly we'd be able to get back to traveling. So I'm curious if you have ever done a month in review album yourself. I really love it. I love having the opportunity to document or scrapbook those photos that I wouldn't otherwise scrapbook. Like for instance, this photo here with these bird feathers, I never would do a layout about it, but it's kind of fun to include it in this book because it was a really strange situation where after a storm, I had probably about 50 of these bird feathers all over my balcony. No sign of the bird though, so I'm hoping he was okay. Another great thing about month in review is if you really do nothing else but this, you could have your entire year mostly documented. Obviously, I selected photos that were not the big items of the month because I want to scrapbook those bigger items separately, but you could totally switch this up and have those items included in here. I opted to just go with 5 photos because that seems to be about a good number of these kind of random photos I want to include, but you could easily expand upon this to add way more photos. You can do collages, etc., you know, and leave your options open. And here is the final layout for this year. I can't tell you how excited I am that this project is done. The person that I was inspired from this is Janet from RTS Scrapbooking. If you haven't checked out her YouTube channel, you definitely should. She also has a Patreon channel. She charges such a nominal fee. I think it's $1 a month. And she puts out phenomenal videos, so definitely check her out. But she puts way more photos on hers than mine, and she is all about getting those photos in. So definitely check her out if that's something that you are interested in, if you need to have more photos than what I'm showing you here. So that is it for my month in review album. I will be working on the base pages for 2022, probably not till the middle of this year, I'm thinking. I've got a lot on my plate right now in the next few months, and so it's okay for me to leave that until a little bit later. So if that is something you are interested in, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so that when that video does come up, you will be able to check it out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the process. If you do this, if you don't, if you're interested but you're not sure, leave the comments below. And this wraps up the first week in Finish It February. I am so thrilled to have this project done. That's another thing that I'd love to hear from you. If you're working on projects and trying to get them done, let me know what you're working on. How is it going? Are you actually making progress? Remember, the whole intent of this challenge for this month is to make progress. It doesn't necessarily mean that you truly do have to finish it. We're working towards finishing the project. So I want to encourage you to dig out a project that you started a while ago and maybe have lost a little steam on, and just see if this challenge can give you the push to get it done. Thanks so much for joining me, and until next time, Happy crafting!